Okay, what's up, everybody? So, I've been doing a lot of reading this year. My goal is 100 books, and I think I'm like at 64 or 65 right now. And yeah, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of reading, and these are some of the books that I've really enjoyed. Out of all of them, there's a lot of psychology type books in here. So if you're interested in those type of reads, you'll probably really like these. Hopefully you haven't read them already. Even then, you'll probably enjoy the discussion. Obviously, it's just nice having something to like share with other people, kind of thing. And in these books, there's no like particular order that I'm talking about them, except the last one. The last one is last because I do feel like it is my favorite read out of all of them. I just thought it was really fascinating. First, let's talk about this one. It is No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but I think that's how you say it. Yeah, No Exit was specifically fascinating, for me at least, in that it's very obvious that it was comparable to The Good Place. I really, really don't want to accidentally, what was it called? Spoil that show, but that's such a good show. I know it's been out for a while, but even I haven't seen it until recently. And when I started watching it, I really binged it, and it was great. And you really see the influence from this book. Again, I don't want to talk about it too much, but it's just fascinating, the idea of like rethinking what hell can be like what afterlife is like. I mean, it doesn't go to the extremes of like Dante's Inferno or anything, but nonetheless, it adds like a different kind of way of viewing it, and I loved it. I thought it was pretty fascinating. There's like definitely like that twist that they add towards the end. Well, I guess towards the end, and I don't know. I guess it really shows what we think about each other in some way. Kind of. I don't know. I guess the right word isn't pessimistic, but it feels like that. It just feels kind of awful what it's suggesting. But either way, the story was just so fascinating. Like, you really just don't expect. Like, there's so much confusion what's going on in the beginning, and I just love that so much. Like, it's kind of a tricky narrative structure where you're working with something where it's like, if people don't find that sense of like confusion interesting, then you're not going to really offer that much, and they might not like push through, kind of thing, to like actually enjoy it. But the way it's set up, I feel like it was really well done, and I loved it. Another one that I really want to talk about is The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and Other Clinical Tales. So this one is just a fascinating book. Honestly, I just Googled some of these, which is really great. Like, I feel like it's a hit or miss kind of thing when you just like Google stuff for like, like what's a popular read that I could possibly enjoy. And yeah, this one was definitely one of them. I did not expect it to be that good, but wow, it was fascinating. Fascinating for two reasons, at least for me. One is that the clinical trials that or tales, I guess, that are being discussed are just genuinely different. Like, there are things that are going on with people that you just don't expect to even be a thing, really. And yet here it is. I mean, let's see. There's one example where someone has. Let's see. I think I'm correct about this. He has Tourette syndrome. He goes by Ray. Witty Tiki Ray is like the nickname that he has gotten. And one thing, I mean, it was just fascinating to me. The thing is, we're not just talking about like the whole Tourette syndrome, but we're also talking about like what it meant for him. And like, it seems like such an odd thing to say, and I'm not trying to romanticize any like, syndrome or anything like that, but it's very clear that he developed a sense of identity through his syndromes. And you see in the story that he actually chooses, like, even though he knows the medicine helps him, he chooses to go without it some days, and then the rest of the days he's on it. Like, something about that is fascinating to me. I really just don't expect things like that to happen, but I mean, here it is. Like, and there's a lot of these little stories like that. Like, I don't know, like the human element really is being considered here. Like, what is the best way for people to live with these conditions? Because that honestly matters, right? The way the human mind works baffles me. So, like, this book not only like informs me about what's going on in there, but also what that means for people's lives. Again, I really did like the Witty Tiki Ray example. Overall, really fascinating books, and every kind of tale or trial it offers like a really interesting story. Another book I really want to talk about is, let's see, True West by Sam Shepard. This is the first time I've really read any of his work, and I was honestly impressed. Really, I feel like this is like the perfect plate for me. Like, I love where it feels like what's at stake isn't like these crazy, like, I don't know. I get kind of like upset with like Marvel and stuff like that, where like the whole universe is at stake. Where it's like relax, you know. I'm not saying those are bad stakes. Like, they're obviously very interesting, but it feels always just too extreme. And in these type of plays, like it's really, it brings it down. You know what I mean? You see like the brothers like really kind of like compete with each other, and they're very upset with each other. And something about that is just way more interesting to me. Like, I like when the stakes just feel like at a more personal level. And yeah, that's really what you get from this. I love stuff like that. It really does satisfy something for me specifically. Like, if you like something like Death of a Salesman, or you really appreciate like the work from Ibsen or George Bernard Shaw, I feel like his work is completely different from those. But when it comes to those stakes of like a lower level but still extremely important within that context, like for those people, well, that's what makes it engaging. And I love this so much. And the ending is very yeah, I don't want to spoil these kind of books, but the ending's pretty good. Just because you really don't expect it. Like, you kind of do, and you kind of do wonder if it was done intentionally, and what that says about their relationship overall, and like the intensity of it. It's hard to say. It's a very surprising ending. Either way, I loved it very much. Glad I read it. Another book that I really liked was this one. The Invisible Gorilla. Look, honestly, a part of my interest was just in this example, right? Like, I've heard about that. I'm pretty sure you might have heard of it too, where it's like, oh, there's these basketball players or whatever, they're all passing around the ball, like, count how many times they pass around the ball, blah blah, right? And then at the end of that experiment thing, people are asked, did you see the gorilla? And most people, or at least a large amount of people, more than you expect, say that they did not see the gorilla, even though there is a gorilla in the video that walks past the players. I always thought that experiment was pretty fascinating. So when I found that there was like a book on it, like that goes into like a deeper dive about it, yeah, I feel like I just had to read it. And one thing I didn't know, I swear I've seen like the videos talking about it, but they never specified this. Maybe I'm just misremembering it, but I didn't know that they had sometimes had used like eye tracking kind of technology, and saw that people really did see the gorilla, like their eye went towards it, but they still didn't register it. Like, that's pretty interesting to me. I mean, that means just because you see something doesn't mean you see it. And that's really interesting. Like, I don't know, just think about that. Like, how does that even work? I don't know. I thought it was pretty fascinating, and there's so much more in this book. I mean, I could go on about it. I highlighted so much different things. Like, apparently it's really easy to like manipulate people's memories. Like, memory is pretty faulty, and it's, I don't know, that's pretty scary. But either way, a fascinating read, and I don't know, I liked it very much. Definitely recommend this one if you're like just into like what was got like the more the nuances of the brain and how it could potentially fail you. Like, I don't know. It's really, really interesting, and I loved it so much. Another one that I really liked, and this one was very, very, like, I have gotten more involved in this stuff recently just because of this book. So this book is The Psychology of Everyday Things. You probably heard of this book. I think Vox actually made like a video, not of the book, but like of the guy who wrote it, Norman, right? Donald A. Norman. I think the video is about like Norman doors, and like he didn't design the doors, which I think is funny. A lot of people make that assumption. No, that's not what he did. What he did is like he realized that some things are just really difficult to operate, and like doors are kind of a good example, which sounds really weird, but it does happen a lot. I see it happen a lot. I make the mistake a lot, and it's fascinating how annoying that problem is, where it's like you go to open the door and something about it doesn't make sense and you're supposed to actually pull. That happens so much, and I thought it was just like a quirky kind of phenomenon kind of thing, but no, it's much more important than that. Like, we're not just talking about doors, we're talking about if this specific thing has this design, we will interact with it in a specific way. And that is pretty fascinating. Like, then that's not just something like, of course this book will always like, it really helps you if you're like a designer specifically, but yeah, it's something that you have to consider in your everyday life. And it's like we tend to judge ourselves in these instances, right? I'm just gonna use the doors example. He goes into like way more examples, but let's just stick to doors for now. Like at stake, even it sounds almost insane, but at stake really is our sense of self-esteem. Like when we go to open a door and we fail to do so, there definitely is that moment of like, I won't say self-hatred, that's probably like too strong of a term, but like we definitely just feel dumb in the moment, and then we do it so often we're just like, we just don't understand, like we can't do this basic thing of opening a door. But it's not on us. I mean, there are the design of the handle that makes it look like it's a pull when it's really a push. There's some designs where for whatever reason you feel like it should be on the right side, but it's actually on the left side. And some other designs just don't make it very clear as to what to do. And this is not just the only instance. Again, I'm just gonna pick up like a random kind of thing. Even something like faucets are a really good example, where you don't know it, but there's a surprising amount of complexity in the interaction, right? Where it's like, for one, there's just not a standard way of doing things, and that could make things surprisingly difficult. Now, I'm not saying like this is the end of the world. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying that it's like the design does matter because it does change how we interact with it. For instance, let's say that there is no faucet, right? At least for me, I'm like, okay, that means maybe it's like touch sensitive. Then I touch it, nothing happens. I'm like, all right. And then maybe there's like a sensor. I wave my hand, still nothing happens. And then I see like a knob on the side. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to interact with that. And then maybe I twist it. That doesn't, I feel like a resistance. So maybe I push it and then the water comes out. A lot of little things going on there, right? And this book really helps inform you on why that's happening. I thought that was really interesting. I never thought about that element of like any object really. But after reading this book, it's something that I feel like I see every day, right? Like I think about it so much now. And like, why is this hard to interact with? It might be like a culture thing. It might be like what I expected from other designs. Like what informs me about this design specifically. Like I wouldn't really be thinking about this stuff at all if it weren't for this book, and I'm just really happy that I read it. And yeah, I've been reading more stuff about like design and like the way it influences our way of like interacting with it. Really, really interesting book. Strongly recommend it. And give that Fox video a look into. I feel like they'll give you like kind of a sense of what this book might actually offer. Well, that's really all I have to say. If you have any like recommendations, I would love to hear them in the comments. I'm sure that anybody else would as well if they're like clicking on a video like this. But yeah, that's it for me. Have a good one.